This is the Deepcool Matrexx 70, a larger iteration in the Matrexx family with its own unique quirks and features. So today, I'm going to review it, building it, benchmarking it, and then I'm going to give it a Greg score. And for more of my thoughts on the Matrexx 70, you can visit autotrader.com/what? Okay, so this is definitely a strange case, but it somehow manages to impress me at the same time, especially given its price. You've got 3 panels of tempered glass, one acting as the left panel, which I've removed because the glare is like pretty extreme, another as the front panel here, and then the third is not the right panel, it's actually the basement roof. That's right, this piece right here is a tinted slab of tempered glass, and boy does it look good. But is it functional? And are you paying more for this layout? We'll talk about all of that and more in this video. So to answer the first question, no, this glass basement is not functional. It really doesn't do anything other than reflect light. I mean, and it would look really good if it scattered more light than it actually does, like the graphics card light. It'd look really nice if you could see that kind of underglow on the top of the basement, but you don't really get much of that. And honestly, if I had the option of spending $10 or $20 more to have a glass basement, I would definitely turn that down. Luckily, this case's MSRP is $70. The Matrexx 55 retails for around $55, and the Matrexx 40 comes in at, yeah, 40, so you see the trend. Fun fact, this case here was actually, I believe, the Matrexx 75 at Computex last year, so Deepcool's effectively lowered the price since then, and the launch is actually going to be, I think, next week or the week after that. Now, a trade-off to such an affordable chassis, given its dimensions and features, is fan inclusion. You'll find only a single 120mm cheap voltage-controlled Molex adapted fan to mess around with, and it honestly belongs in the trash. Good thing is you only have one of these to deal with. I mean, come on, a fan with Molex in 2019. Yeah, so throw it away, and that'll free up a bit of your budget, right? Having to pay only $70 versus maybe 80 or 90 for some okay-ish fans. You can buy maybe Noctua's, Be Quiet's, Corsair fans. We threw 2 140mm Silent Wings 3 fans in here, as well as a single 120 at the rear for the sake of consistency in our temperature test, which we will get to shortly. So first, let's talk about hardware support. This case technically can support up to eATX thanks to its flat motherboard tray and additional standoffs toward the front. This is a nice touch, and you'll still find satisfactory cable management headroom behind this tray. The case does lack rubber grommets pretty much everywhere, which is a shame. I'd have taken that over the glass basement. I think that the rubber grommets are far more functional than the glass basement is. But what can you do? I mean, I can complain about it. This is what we have to deal with. So I know that competition in the PC space is fierce, especially in the case market. I just like the fact that some $70 cases have rubber grommets. And if they don't have rubber grommets, maybe they have something else like a cable bar, like what NZXT does. In this case, you get none of that. It's just bare open holes for routing cables, and it just looks a little ugly, to be frank. Deepcool did, however, take care of some other issues I had going into this review. For one, the entire top of the case is devoted to fans and radiators. That is beautiful. You can fit up to 3 120mm or 140mm fans up here, along with something as large as a 360mm AIO. The mounting points are positioned far enough to the left that you shouldn't have any issues clearing VRM heatsinks and cables, so that's nice. You can also mount the same config up front, though you'll find that the airflow is much better served above thanks to the single dust filter. That's this right here. The front of the case has a big old piece of glass blocking any horizontal flow pattern, right? So you're not gonna have air just get pushed right in. It's gotta come in from these side vents, and these side vents are not, why is this not coming out? There we go. The side vents are not very porous, let's say. The grills themselves do have integrated dust filters, but Deepcool's included a second cheap screen behind them. I kind of recommend just throwing this away. I'm not sure how they expect you to use this when you have intake fans installed. I can't install it on the other side, so kind of weird. There are a couple of holes for routing cables through this space, including SATA cables for 2 SSDs you could mount up front, but I'd like to see dedicated cutouts specifically for fan cables. Otherwise, it can get a bit awkward trying to hide them. I mean, this is kind of exposed to that tempered glass panel on the left side. Speaking of cable routing space elsewhere, things are where you'd expect them to be. The glass basement provides a large cutout for HD audio, USB 2, front I/O, the works, and large cutouts for the 24-pin, USB 3, and SATA cables line the right side of a standard ATX motherboard. By the way, the front of this basement includes one of the only signs of branding. You can see the name Deepcool here, surrounded by semi-transparent plastic lining, which means you can technically illuminate it if you place an RGB strip back here. It doesn't come standard by default, just a cost-saving measure for Deepcool, but I should note that Flynthe does a similar thing in their P350X, which, mind you, is very similar in price to this. So I would have liked to have seen Deepcool include the RGB strip or some sort of LED or something down here. Otherwise, this is just like, why make this semi-transparent if you're not actually going to put anything back there? I mean, the option is nice, but if no one wants to buy it after the fact, it's just going to look a little weird. I'd rather this have been like a mirror finish or just like a slightly off black color. Two last things I'd like to point out on this side. For one, there are two SSD mounts to the right of the motherboard standoffs I mentioned earlier. Obviously, you can't use these if you're sporting EATX boards, but there's a nice inclusion just to consider. I don't want to gloss over that. I only wish that these cutouts were a bit larger or even merged, as I couldn't fit my SATA power cable through the bottom cutout, and only an angled SATA data cable would fit through here. So I ended up routing SATA power through the top cutout, excuse me, instead of the bottom one. Just a bit frustrating. And the other thing on this side, no dedicated cutout for PCIe power, meaning you'll likely have to run these cables through the large opening toward the rear of the basement, which is why these cables kind of stretch awkwardly way over here. I mean, it looks decent with like a set of custom sleeve cables like these, but if you're just sporting your power supplies cables, it's not going to look that great, and it's going to have to stretch all the way basically across your graphics card shroud. Doesn't look too great. Now on to the right side, you'll find two extra SSD trays behind the motherboard. A great use of space in my opinion. You'll also find a removable hard drive cage, good for 2 drives. PSU space is adequate. Anything under 200 millimeters should fit without a hitch. You do have to load things in from the right side, however, so mind your PSU cables when inserting the unit. Just a bit frustrating again. Our straight power 11 fit almost perfectly, so you could use that as a reference. If you still find this installation tricky, you can lay the Matrexx 70 down on its side and slide the hard drive cage about an inch closer to the front. The only downside here is that you'll be partially exposing the cage from behind the basement, so it'll look a little weird kind of sticking out. It'll also reduce the amount of space available for a 360mm fan rad combo if you decide to place that up front for whatever reason. Rule of thumb, just stick with a smaller power supply and you'll be good to go. Total clearance back here comes in at around 1 inch or 2.5 centimeters or so. This is satisfactory, but an extra centimeter would have been nice. You'll see, however, that right panel installation makes things super simple to lock up, even if you have a rat's nest back here, which is a good thing. Now, I saved the exterior for later because a lot of what we're going to talk about with respect to temperatures has to do with this design, and it's a questionable one, but it's not terrible. First of all, you'll find that it follows a conventional mid-tower format, right? 7 PCIe slots at the rear, a large dust filter underneath, a large dust filter up top, standard front I/O, including 2 USB 3.0 ports, a headphone jack, microphone jack, and a dedicated reset switch with a built-in LED indicator for hard drives or solid-state drives, whatever. I like how clean it looks up here, and I like that everything is relatively open for top fan support and exhaust. Now, what I don't like is this front glass panel. The mechanism for removing it is pretty cool. You get a dedicated button right here. You push that in, and it just unlatches the top of the this piece of glass from the chassis. And then to remove it completely, you have to kind of pull up. That's how it's resting on the bottom. These two little brackets. And then there you go. The entire front panel is removed. Now remember that other dust filter, that secondary one that was sitting kind of where these front fans are? I removed that again because there's an included mesh kind of in these grills, and I think that's gonna do a good enough job keeping dust out. In fact, I think that the mesh in here is the exact same mesh that they had also laying against the fan tray, so it's kind of redundant for no reason. By the way, all 3 panels are kind of secured in a similar way, so you just slide them into their respective positions below, and they'll kind of just hang there. And then you can secure it up top. In the case of the left and right panels, you have just 2 thumb screws to keep things in place. It's nice. It eliminates the need to secure all 4, and at the same time, you can kind of push, especially with that right panel, you can just push it into place, which kind of pushes all the cables against that motherboard tray. Much easier than sliding the right panel on from the rear. That was something I also liked about the H500 from NZXT. So a brief synopsis then. Great airflow qualities up top, and in my opinion, terrible design up front. I just don't like the trend with like having a solid panel here, especially if you're not going to do anything about it on the side. Like this is just To me, this is not enough, and I'd like to see more if companies are going to be bold enough to completely block this off. So anyway, to the temps now. I switched to IDA64 for case temperature testing, meaning I had to rerun this exact config in the other two cases we previously reviewed this quarter, which really sucked. But you can see here that the Matrexx 70 falls somewhere in between our Darkbase 700 hotbox and the Airy P600S from Flynthe. You can find links to both of those reviews in the video description, by the way. Long story short, this case chokes for air intake, but it has absolutely no problem exhausting it. So in this config, we're probably running with slightly negative internal pressure. I will say that Deepcool's saving grace in this case was the top ventilation. So if they had completely sealed off this top section, we'd be looking at temperatures closer to Be Quiet's Darkbase 700, whose CPU temps grazed to 84 degrees Celsius. We only saw a 2-degree delta for the Matrexx 70 and literally no change in the graphics card. And to tip the scales in Be Quiet's favor, at least the Darkbase 700 was a quiet hotbox with its sound damping material. This is not a silent case. Obviously, this is pretty much exposed to the atmosphere. So they're not advertising this as a quiet case. I have no problem with that. Just know that going into the purchase if you decide to buy this. But I still want to end on a high note. I know it seems like this case is just missing a few important details, but Deepcool actually managed to put together, I think it's a well-rounded case for under 100 USD. And there's something to be said about that. Like, sure, it doesn't come with all the fancy bells and whistles of the P600S or the O11 Dynamic from Lee & Lee, but it does nearly all the jobs a case should do at an affordable price point, in my opinion. No, I don't think the NZX TH500 or the Flynthe P350X fall short of this. I think this case is slightly worse than those two, and those are both kind of in the same price category. That's just me. But you guys might hate those cases. You might really like this one. So again, it's going to be more or less an opinion at that point. Functionally, I think those two cases are better than this one. But this is unique, right? You get the glass basement. I mean, like I said, Deepcool is trying to differentiate their brand from others by doing some cool / weird things, however you want to look at this. Again, it's not really functional. It's just an aesthetic thing. And if you want to brag about having a glass basement, by all means. Oh, and one more thing, a testament to the cable management with this case in the right panel. This was my first attempt to install the right panel, and it went very smoothly. So I'm very impressed again. The Matrexx 70 has a lot going for it. The case launches in early April. You'll still be able to find it on sites like Newegg and Amazon shortly. I'll be sure to link those as soon as they pop up. For now, I've linked the product page along with other cases at similar price points, including those from NZXT and Flynthe if you are interested. If you guys like the video, thumbs up, you know what to do. Thumb it down if you feel the complete opposite, or if you hate everything about life. Click that red subscribe button if you haven't already. Become a member if you're feeling especially lucky, and we'll catch you in the next one. This is Science Studio. Thanks for watching, and thanks for learning.